McGinley, I said to you when you joined the lobby there that it feels like 2021 again. It's an emergency broadcast, and it's one that I wasn't hoping to do tonight. I was hoping to come on here, talk about the success of Celtic from yesterday, talk about yet another treble for the club, but instead at the last minute we're going to have to come on here and talk about the what looks to be very likely departure of Ange Postecoglou over the next few days. Ryan, it's nice to have you again live on the channel. I'll start off with asking how you are, mate. I don't know if tonight's news has made you feel any different, but it's good to see how you're doing.
I'm still good. I'm still buzzing over yesterday. Obviously, Celtic got another treble, eighth treble, world record. So I'm still feeling the buzz about that. I think in the background, I had a funny feeling this was going to happen.
Yeah.
The fact it's been talked about for the past week or so, it's not as if it's came out of the blue. We knew that over the next, 24, 48 hours after the game, we knew that there would be developments one way or the other. We would know if he was staying or we would know if he was going. It just so happens it's the latter. When David Ornstein from The Athletic tweets, it's gospel, basically. If there's one source that's better than Fabrizio Romano, I would say it's David Ornstein. So I would take this as it's happening.
On that note, let's update the viewers. There is currently about 500 people and more piling into the stream. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you, despite the circumstances. It's good to see you all. Get involved. We will be taking comments on board throughout the stream. You can donate, like and subscribe, all that good jazz. But to give you context, it's pretty much official. Ange Postecoglou is leaving Celtic. This was tweeted at 5:25 this evening from the mentioned David Ornstein there by McGinley. He said Tottenham are close to appointing Ange Postecoglou as their new boss. The deal for the Celtic manager to make the Tottenham Hotspur switch is expected to be finalised in the coming days. The 57-year-old Australian has emerged as the standout candidate from the recruitment process. Of course, that being reported in The Athletic by David Ornstein, and then followed up very, very quickly from Fabrizio Romano about 20 minutes later. He said that a new round of talks will be scheduled in the next 24 to 48 hours between Tottenham and it's the CAA agency in order to complete the agreement for Ange Postecoglou. The contract is almost agreed, waiting on the final details to be sorted, and then it will be sealed. So, McGinley, we're no longer at the point now where it's ifs, buts and maybes and, you know, it's their word against somebody else's, or it's it's one that we can hope to fall through by the looks of it and by the sources that are reporting on it. This is the kind of news now which you can almost take, as you used, Ryan, gospel. Just some things in football, with transfers, with managerial switches, with big news, some journalists and some things come along when you just know that's it, and that's like that tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's weird to say this, and I know that everybody's disappointed at this point in time, but I'm glad it's getting over and done with quickly. I'm glad that this isn't a drawn out process, and I'm pretty sure that Celtic would have caught wind of this days ago, that stuff like this was going to happen. When all those news reports were circulating, I'm sure they've learned their lessons from previously. You've got to hope that they've learned the lessons from previously and they're doing their due diligence and scouting a suitable replacement, because that's the worry now. The next worry is we need to bring in somebody that's as good, if not better, than Ange Postecoglou. Celtic, and this is the one thing that I know we're probably going to go into more detail about talking about this. I've tweeted about it. A couple of other people have tweeted about it as well. This is the most attractive Celtic have been in certainly my time supporting them. I don't think there's been a better situation.
I think that this must be one of the most attractive points to take over Celtic in my lifetime, and I'd probably go back maybe as far as. And do you know what? This might sound daft, right? But McGinley, I think that we're even in a better state from where Martin O'Neill left us. Because when Martin O'Neill moved on from Celtic, you know, Larsson had just went out the door the year prior. A lot of the players were ageing. It was sort of like a new chapter, a new beginning at Celtic. There had to be a lot of work done. Whereas now, a lot of the groundwork's there in place for our next step, right?
Yeah, the thing about Martin O'Neill, when he left and Gordon Strachan went in, there was a lot of downsizing at the club as well. A lot of players were on legacy contracts. I remember reading an article from Tony Haggerty last week saying that Bobo Baldi was on a 5-year deal worth 28k a week. We just wouldn't pay that for a player. We'd maybe pay that for maybe one or two players on our team, but for a guy for a defender, I don't think Celtic would pay that. Apart from maybe Carter Vickers, actually, now that I think about it. But back in those times, 28,000 would have been a lot more. So it was a different sort of job for Gordon Strachan to come into. But the state that Ange is leaving is a much better state than the one he found us in. That's one thing, and I don't think that.
Do you think there's sorry to cut you off, McGinley, just doing my journalistic instinct things here, but do you think that's a worry though? Because now that we are in this position, I see a lot of people already, and we will getting onto comments tonight. There's already a donation here. Thank you, Dan, for the $5. We'll come on to talking about Brendan Rodgers, I'm sure, later on when we're talking about candidates. But McGinley, in what you're saying, do you think there's got to be a worry? Because a lot of people are getting panicky that, Ange is the first out the door. Who else goes now? Do you think that there can be a trust that a lot of the tools that we have right now will still be here next season?
We've got to trust them at this point, because as a new system, I know a lot of the board are the same. I know we've got Peter Lawwell as the chairman. But this is the first appointment, or this would be the first new appointment that Michael Nicholson will have to make, because it was obviously
Don Mackay.
I mean, it was Peter Lawwell that made the decision.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we listened to Don Mackay saying he knew about Ange Postecoglou in Japan. I was like, that was a load of rubbish. I tried to believe that at the time, but even then it was very unrealistic. But this is the first appointment that Michael Nicholson has to make, and this is where he's going to start really getting judged. He's going to have to pull it out of the bag, I think. Because I think we can talk about new managers now. I think with the...
But you've got to, haven't you? You've got to.
It's. I know we say we never stop in that, but Celtic do never stop. We need to appoint somebody when that deal does go through. It's looking like a when rather than an if with Tottenham now. So, it's kind of been thrust on us quite quickly, even though we've known it's in the pipeline. The fact that it's all came out in the past hour or two, it's
Did you see it yesterday? Did you look at Ange at any point through the closing stages of the game? Did you see it? Aye.
Yeah, I seen it straight away. I seen it when he was waving to the fans. I heard it with his interviews. Something seemed off to me, and I just had a wee slight sense. I was like, "There's more to this. There is more to it." And then,
obviously, it's really different when you're at the game, because obviously you don't get that same experience with the interviews, and unless you get a cracking view of the big screens, it's hard to read somebody's face and their body language from miles back at Hampden or whatnot. So for me, it wasn't as easy. But I remember I was messaging people as the game was going on, and as we were leaving the stadium, and I was like, what's Ange been saying? How's it looking? And literally every person said the same thing, he's off. And then, I don't know if you made your way to Celtic Park after the game, Ryan, but we went to Celtic Park, and you might have obviously watched the stream or got the highlights or whatever. But even when he went up, and the minute he stood in that stage, I said, unless he says something here that evidently shows that he'll be here next season, he's off. Just the way that he spoke and the way that he got it done and dusted, and just... and it's like, I think a lot of people had expectation, Ryan, that Ange was going to come out and in one of the interviews or last night at Celtic Park and give us some big update. But realistically, that was never going to happen. Number one,
no.
If he says he's off, it dampens the whole day, the atmosphere, everything would have been killed. Number two, he says he's staying. Is it a guarantee he's staying? Is he in a place to say that, have confidence? It was never going to be yesterday when anything was confirmed, Ryan. So I think taking the assumptions that you probably would have, as you said, that he was off, it was probably the right guess.
Yeah, I said to my dad, I was sitting next to my dad at Hampden yesterday. I said to him, as soon as when I seen him waving, the way he was sort of carrying himself around the pitch at the end of the game, I was like, he's off ski, he's going. And then even listening to his sort of speech at Celtic Park, I was like, nothing's convincing me that he's staying. And then Celtic put out, I don't know if it was actually in between those two instances, but Celtic put out a message from the manager. Yeah. That tweet now looks even weirder in the whole context of things.
Yep.
That tweet, I don't understand that. Now, I know the social media team have been doing really well recently on Celtic Twitter. They've been really bossing it, but I think that was a misfire, because that gives people sort of false hope, because they are going to do another statement. They are going to have to do another message from the manager. They're going to have
to do a farewell from the manager now.
Yeah, and that doesn't look great. That looks a wee bit like egg in the face, if you ask me. So, yeah, on a day that they largely nailed it with their social media, I was loving it all throughout the night as the night was going on. I think they misfired with that one. But it's going to be an interesting couple of days, and it's certainly going to be an interesting summer. It's good for us to kind of we'll certainly have stuff
Oh,
to
it's
talk
great.
about.
It's great
That's
for
for
this
sure.
channel, Ryan. It's great for me. I'll have a fantastic summer, I suppose. Here, I was thinking. I've been saying I've bumped into so many people recently. Like at the last few derby games and the last few celebrations, in the Merchant City and stuff. And some people will always ask you like, "Oh, how's the YouTube going? Do you have enough to talk about?" Blah blah. And I always say the same thing. I turn around and say, "Oh, the summer's always a bit of a killer, but I'm sure it'll be all right. Well, not this summer." No, this summer. I think I'll be fine this summer. Before we get on to the next few talking points, thank you very much, Alan, for the £5 donation. To say the way he stood in, and took in, "You'll never walk alone," told us he was away. P.S. Celtic should go and get Michael Carrick. One of the shouts that I mentioned on the podcast, Ryan, Michael Carrick. We're going to come on to managerial options. Thank you for the donation. If you want a prioritised comment on screen, you can donate. We will try and get to all of your comments throughout the stream when we get on to a Q&A segment, but a couple of things we need to run through, Ryan. And I want to talk about the manner of Ange leaving and how that's affected both his relationship with supporters and maybe his legacy at Celtic. The first thing on that note, though, I want to say is, how do you think it's being earlier than we expected? I hope it doesn't have too much of a negative impact on this team. I thought that we were really just hitting our strides now. I really thought that we were just kind of hitting the peak of Ange football. And I thought that we would see 3 years of it before he was maybe ready to move on. So the fact it's came 2 years in when I feel like there was still work to do and still maybe bigger strides to make on a European level, does that leave you with some disappointment?
It does in a way, but then when you look at it on the other hand, I would say look at Brendan Rodgers' third season at Celtic.
Mm-hmm.
It was largely
flatter.
It was flat. I remember there was a mini crisis going on. We were signing players like Yusuf Malumbu, Marian Shved we were signing at
Marian
that point
Shved. I
as
think
well.
that was the same season that we signed, like, the January window. We got Ollie
Bio.
Burke and Timo Weah and Bio and such.
Yeah, I think the thing is, you need to remember, Ange's going out, or Postecoglou as we'll refer to him as now. He's not. Well, he's still the Celtic manager at this point, so
Yes.
I guess you can still get.
He'll always be Big Ange to me, though. Will always be Big Ange to me.
Yeah. He's leaving at his optimum, I think. He's just won a treble. Next season maybe could have went to plan. You never know.
Yeah.
We won't really know now. That's the thing. It's
on
that note,
Ryan, on that note, do you remember a lot of the whole thing with Ange's like third season? They always said like first season is getting into it, second season's when you get the best, and then like third season, mind Yokohama ended up finishing like 8th on the table or something like that. So who knows? Maybe it would. I'm not trying to make excuses for him leaving now, but you're maybe onto something what you're saying.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's you'll never know. And then obviously with the next manager that comes in, we'll see how they do. Obviously, you'd still expect Celtic to be favourites because look at the attractive position we've got. Look at the squad that we've got. Look at the managers that we'll be able to attract as well. I think that's the really, really exciting thing for me. That's why I'm more optimistic than pessimistic regarding this sort of announcement, because unlike 2 years ago when the team was in an absolute crisis, the team couldn't be much better. And it won't take that much for somebody else to come in and maybe add their own swing to things or their own blend of football. It's an exciting time regardless of who's the manager.
Yeah, I want to talk about a few things in relation to him leaving, so we'll come on to that, but thank you, Stuart, for the £5 donation as well. He said, sad that Ange is going, but what a job he's done. Considering the rebuild he had to do, don't want Moyes, Rodgers. Graham Potter is a good shout. Graham Potter, I'm sure, another one of the names we're going to talk about. But I want to get something off my chest, Ryan. I've already seen, and there'll probably be people in here, I've not had a good look. The comments are flying, so I've not had the chance to properly analyse everybody's comments, but I've already had a few replies to a few of my tweets tonight. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to speak for myself here for a moment. And I think we went through this in the podcast as well. I have no hard feelings whatsoever towards Ange Postecoglou leaving Celtic, the time he's leaving Celtic, the manner he's leaving Celtic. I think that some of the opinions I've seen are absolutely outrageous. I don't think that people have thought them through. And I think that people are getting awful hurt for no reason. I don't think that Ange necessarily has done anything wrong wanting to explore this option with Tottenham Hotspur. He's a guy that's 58 years of age, who's been offered the job of a lifetime right now, the money of a lifetime and the opportunity of a lifetime to go and give it a crack in the Premier League. If he didn't take it now, there's no guarantee he would get it again. And he's came to Celtic and he has rebuilt us from a position that I don't think many managers would have got going like him. He's won 5 out of 6 trophies. He's gave us some of the best football we've ever seen at Celtic Park. He's recruited magically and he's created a connection with the club for us as supporters that I've not seen in my lifetime as a Celtic supporter. And yet some people are getting on his back saying he's not delivered promises, that he's as bad as Brendan Rodgers, that he should be ashamed of himself, blah, blah, blah. I don't agree with any of it. I am very grateful, very thankful for everything he's done at this club, and he's exceeded every belief and expectation I had of him, Ryan.
Yeah, I get that, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I'm pretty much of the same opinion as you are, but what I would say as well is I don't think there's a correct way to feel about this. I think fans will deal with it in a different way. You don't want to put any demographics out there on how you're supposed to feel or how certain age groups feel about it. It's really just up to your own opinion. If you see him as sort of walking out on the club, then that's your opinion.
I can certainly understand it, Ryan. I just think that, you know, if you have that opinion, fair. I think that that's justified. You know, if you, I just think that some people really struggle to deal with this thing that people can and will leave Celtic.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know it's a mental thing to think about, but there are other clubs out there other than Celtic. Unfortunately, Celtic are kind of constrained and constricted by the league that they're in. This wouldn't happen if we were in the Premier League. Now, it's pointless talking about that because the chances of us ever going down there are very, very slim. But if Celtic were in the Premier League, they'd be a bigger team than Spurs. I would already argue the point that they are a bigger team, they are a bigger club. If they were in the Premier League, this wouldn't happen. But we were saying that about Rodgers as well. I think the difference between Rodgers and Ange, and it's quite obvious, Rodgers done it midway through the season. Ange waited till the end of the season, won everything, and now he's leaving with his optimum sort of feeling from the Celtic fans. He'll be wished well. I know people will be annoyed that he's leaving so soon, but at the same time, Celtic move on. Celtic,
I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that same quote that I used the podcast, Ryan. Ange might be away on Monday, but Celtic will still be here on Tuesday.
Very, very true. And as much as we loved Ange and we loved Ange, Celtic are bigger than Ange Postecoglou, and you know we're still going to be there next season. Look at the 90% of season ticket renewals that I heard last week. We're all going to be there next season, regardless of who it is as manager. We're just hoping that the Celtic board come out and really give us a good manager, someone that we can really build towards and build something else with, because Celtic are in a really good place just now. It's very rare to be able to walk into a job where it's successful. Even 2 years ago at Celtic, Ange was coming into a team that was just out of a crisis-filled season where it seemed as if we were self-destructing in absolutely every facility or in every single department at Celtic. But now they're in a really, really good place. And I think there's going to be a real elite level of managers that are applying for this job. I really do think we're going to get... we need to pull something out of the bag here.
Right, you've got to look at it now, right? This is 2 of our last 3 managers, Ryan. 2 of our last 3 managers have come to Celtic. They've won trophy after trophy. One of them bagged himself a job with a Premier League winning side of 2 or 3 years prior. They went on to win an FA Cup. They went on to win a Community Shield and play in European football. The other has went on to take one of the English top 6 jobs, with one of the best stadiums in world football, with one of the biggest budgets in the Premier League. Yeah, the best
stadium in the world.
Yeah, it is. It's the best stadium in England, without a shadow of a doubt. And that's 2 of our last 3 managers. Now, this is the part where Celtic fans, everybody watching this stream, you're not going to like what's going to come out of my mouth. Our next manager is going to be in a similar mould to that. We're going to have someone who'll be here for 2 or 3 years, and they'll want something like the 2 managers have got. And honestly, you've either got to accept that, or you've got to accept a Neil Lennon as in charge of this club. That's the way it goes. You either get an elite manager who's here for 2 or 3 years, or you get a Neil Lennon. And I know what I'd pick every day of the week. An elite manager, right?
We need to start treating managers as if they're players, and you've got to think of them as assets, in my opinion. this is just the way that we're going to roll. Unfortunately, due to the constraints of the league that we play in, like I mentioned before, this is what's going to happen if you get a good manager. If you've got a good manager, as Ange Postecoglou has undoubtedly shown, he showed that before Celtic. He just didn't have the hype around him. Now he does. He's got the hype, and now he's been scouted by a team down south. Spurs is a good job. Don't get me wrong; it's a very, very good job. And it's a great opportunity for him. He's the first Australian to be managing in the Premier League. I wish him well. But Celtic need to start thinking about who we can get in. We need to get another top-class manager in that's going to keep up the standards that Ange just started in this team. There's names. I'm guessing we're going to go on to talk about names in a minute.
We're going to go on to another donation. It's $5 It's Sean Maher saying, if Ange takes Kyogo and Rio, will the fans still wish him well? I don't think we'll have to worry about, certainly Kyogo anyway. But we'll come on to talking about that when the time comes. I think it would be pretty bold to assume he's just going to go away and then raid Celtic. I don't think it's as black and white as that. What I will say is, I noticed the Australian dollars, Sean, and what I will say to all the Australians watching right now, don't go anywhere. Stay with us. Just because Ange is leaving, you don't need to leave as well. I hope that you go on to keep supporting and watching Celtic week in, week out. If you've joined us as an Ange Postecoglou follower, we're going to talk about the options and such that we've got, Ryan, but I just want to come back to that point very quickly that you were touching on about the attraction that is the Celtic job right now, and the point that I added about two of our last three managers. Ryan, I'm just going to throw out a couple of names very quickly, and we don't need to go in depth about these guys specifically at the moment. But names like Graham Potter and names of that calibre aren't even as far-fetched anymore as what they maybe once were. Honestly, and once again, doesn't need to be him specifically, but someone like a Graham Potter has got to understand and surely justify the fact that he could come here, win back-to-back trebles, win one treble, whatever, and then he's right back in with big jobs just like Ange has been, Ryan. That's the situation we find ourselves in now.
That's the great thing about this. That's the great thing, that what this opportunity for Ange is now going to show other managers is going to be a clear pathway. And we haven't always seen that pathway. Yes, Rodgers took the Leicester job, which was a bit of a lesser job when you look at it. I know they'd won the league a couple of years previously, but they're not a big club.
I would argue an over-succeeding club, you could say. They were in European football, yada.
Absolutely. The problem was they didn't spend their money, but that's a different story for probably for a Leicester podcast. I'm sure they'll be in a really horrendous place just now. But I tweeted out about an hour and a half, and I've actually had a couple of people messaging me saying that it's not unrealistic. I said that Graham Potter would be an unrealistic option. But the more you think about it, it really is realistic, because you take the financial part, because he'll have that payoff from Chelsea. He'll be set up for a good number of years. He doesn't even need to work for a number of years. Therefore, if he's going to take a job, he'll be taking it for the passion element. He'll be taking it as a passion project to going back and winning, maybe for the first time in his career or since Osterson's, that he'd have a chance at winning a league, which would be trophies, which, at the end of the day, that's what you want. That's probably what he went to Chelsea for as well. He wanted to oversee, development under Todd Bowley, but he wanted to win trophies at the end of the day, and he could still do that at Celtic. Celtic puts you in a great position for trophies. You get guaranteed Champions League football, which you wouldn't have had at Chelsea if he'd stayed there, by the way, or if Todd Bowley had kept him. But it's interesting developments. I've got another couple of names that I wouldn't mind at the club. I don't think we're going to buy out anybody out of their contract if they're already at a club, apart from maybe Knutson, who I think we'll go on to talk about. But you look at guys like maybe Jesse Marsh, maybe Hasenhüttl, sort of that Red Bull sort of football. It's an interesting time to be a Celtic fan, and you're going to get speculation for the next couple of weeks, I would say, until we get a manager in. I don't think it'll be the 100 days that it was last two seasons ago. That's for sure.
The club need to be proactive. They need to, do their due diligence, but we need to move. I would like someone who can now come in and bridge this gap between the absence of no manager, or absence of manager, sorry. We're going to come on to talk about names in a moment, but what I'll say first is, what are you looking for in a manager, Ryan? What is the ideal candidate that Celtic need? For me, I think the main thing that we all want, and the thing that we're missing the most, is a manager who can do something with us in Europe. Now, I don't think that there's a guarantee that happens with any name, because we ultimately are Celtic in Europe. We aren't expected to compete in Europe. So that's something that comes with, a little bit of luck and a little bit of hope. But I would like a manager who can do that. And I think we're now in a position, Ryan, where we've had such beautiful, tantalising, gorgeous football that we want someone that can probably deliver. Maybe not exactly what we had with Ange Postecoglou, but it's something along the same lines. Beautiful attacking football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, philosophy and systems, now I know they're really cliche words, but they're so important nowadays. You've got to have an identifiable style of play. We can't have a dinosaur in charge of Celtic. We need somebody that's going to be forward thinking, that's got fresh ideas. Because the thing is, if you play well in Scotland with a good style of play, chances are you are going to win trophies because of the domination that we've had over the league of the past 10 or so years. Mm-hmm. The financial aspects, we can bring in better players in our teams, so that shouldn't really. I don't even think that's been big headed. I think it's just been honest. It's if we play a good style of football, then we should win trophies up here under a new manager. So I don't even think it's as important as bringing in a manager that has won trophies previously. If they play a good style of football and progressive style of football, then that should translate to trophies in Scotland.
Yeah. So let's talk about names then. I guess this is the part everybody's going to be... Do you know what I can't be arsed with already, though, Ryan? The next week or two, before we get a manager, just every article giving every name under... See, it's exciting, but it's also not at the same time, because you either get your hopes up over somebody or there's just some diddies thrown out there that you don't want. Like, how long before we're linked with Owen Coyle, Ryan? How long is it actually going to be? But no, like, let's get on to names. Everybody knows who my first choice is, and it was one of the... By the way, at £2 donation, thank you, shout out to Ugly Hoodrat. Will it give Rangers a morale boost? I don't think it will necessarily affect them. I don't think that it's going to hand any momentum onto their side. But what I will say is, in-house, I think you'd be naive to suggest... If I was a Rangers fan right now, I'd be excited at the prospect of change in case it doesn't go well. But I don't think it's necessarily meaning that Celtic are going to be the back foot and Rangers will be in the front foot next year, Ryan.
I think the thing is, I've been reading a lot of reports in the newspapers recently about how Michael Beale has got he's got the measure of Ange Postecoglou. He knows how to play against his team. Surely that'll be a negative then if he leaves. It means somebody else is coming in that he doesn't have the measure of. If that's how it works, then I hope that that's how it's reported in the media.
Yeah. Right, I'm going on to my first choice very quickly, and I'm going to get out of the way because so many people are talking about it. This was the first donation of the night from Dan. So shout out to Dan. And I don't care what anybody else's opinion is. I'm just saying that my first choice is going to be Brendan. I don't care. I know I'm this man who's a catalyst for change and development and moving forward, and yet I want to go back to him like he's an ex. I want him back in. But I just there's an aura around Brendan Rodgers that he had at the club that was fantastic, and the success we've seen was unbelievable. And I just think I'd love him back. He's my first choice personally. I'm not saying that anybody else isn't up to his standards, and I don't want anybody else, but I would take him back in a heartbeat, Ryan. I know it's a very divisive issue. I'm not entirely sure of your exact opinion on Brendan, but if he was one of the candidates who said yes and he was ready to come back to the club, I think you would be foolish to knock him back. That's my opinion.
Yeah, but it's very, very interesting, the sort of especially in that third season, the sort of dynamic between Rodgers and Lowell. I wonder how bad that was, because if it was bad, then he can't come back because Lowell's the chairman.
But then remember we had this conversation. Peter Lawwell's not meant to be involved with the football. He's the chairman of the club. He's purely down on the business side of things. So would that be a different working relationship? Would it be lesser? Would it affect Brendan Rodgers' job as much, do you think?
The thing is, it shouldn't come into question, should it? If Celtic are doing a good job, then everybody should be happy. If the manager's doing a good job and he's bringing success to the football club, then that should be that. There shouldn't be any problems. It's an interesting dynamic, and it's obviously one that's going to develop over the next couple of days. You're going to hear all these sorts of names getting floated about. I wouldn't be too disheartened if Brendan Rodgers came back. I mean, he won all 8 trophies that he was competing for during his time at the club. He was on his way to a 9th when he left us. So yeah, he's had success before. He's had the if you believe that Beale was the one that was in charge of Rangers at that point, then he had the measure of Beale as well, because he won, what was it, 2 titles when Beale was around under Gerrard. So it's just one of those ones. I wouldn't be against it. It'd be one of the better choices out of the managers that I've seen. I mean, there's some ones that I just would not touch whatsoever.
Who's your first choice? Go.
Knutson. It's got to be Knutson.
Yeah.
Systematically destroyed Ange Ball at Bodo Glimt v Celtic game. I've never seen a sort of lower team, or a team that I hadn't really heard of as much, come to Celtic Park and just dismantle us. We didn't know what to do. And we couldn't lay a finger on them away from home. I think Ange sort of threw that game away from home in Norway, but they were just so much better than us in all areas of the park that night, or the 2 nights that we played them.
Yeah.
I think the one sort of asterisk on Knutson's name is that a lot of his players at Bodo Glimt have only done well at Bodo Glimt. They went away to other clubs. You look at Patrick Berg, you look at Ola Solbakken. Who's another one? There's a fullback. Hertha Berlin.
He plays for Hertha. Bjorkan.
Yeah, the 3 of them have just not done well in their moves away. Patrick Berg even went back to home comforts in terms of Bodo Glimt. So yeah, he would be my first choice. Him, Hasenhüttl would be one of my first choices as well. Graham Potter would be as well, if that was available. If Graham Potter's available, I think Celtic should go for him. But in terms of realistic ones, I'll go for Knutson.
Knutson, of course. Anybody needs a wee bit of background on him. 2-time winner of the Elite Serien in Norway, of course. So far in his career, 54 years of age, currently top of the table, undefeated, 9 wins, 1 draw at the Elite Serien. And as well, he missed out in the league title last year by quite a distance, but they fired back pretty well, Ryan. So
lost a lot of players last season.
Yeah, they fired back pretty well this season so far. He's definitely somebody I think is capable. I think he would be a good choice.
Yeah, he's been linked with Ajax as well, and that sort of situation does sound like an Ajax sort of situation. The one that happened at Bodo Glimt, you can see that he's probably used to having that high turnover of players and then building molding a new squad. So maybe he wants a job that he'll be able to keep a lot of his players for a couple of years. So maybe Celtic would be a great move for him. He's no young manager either. He's 54. He's only 3 years younger than Ange Postecoglou. I've looked up his age before I came on here. This could be the move that he wants. You talk about how Ange has moved to the Premier League. Maybe this is the move for Knutson to Celtic, to a big club, to sort of show what he can do.
So Knutson's up there. You've also mentioned Hasenhüttl. I would like Hasenhüttl. I think he'd be good. I think a couple of the blemishes in his name is, of course, he was manager of both 9-0 losses for Southampton in the Premier League. Kamikaze, maybe, defensively.
Who was one of them against?
Brendan Rodgers, Leicester. That's right. So it was. It was Brendan Rodgers, Leicester, and then was it Solskjaer's Man United?
Man United, yeah.
So two big losses, of course. They're the blemishes, but I think once again a very impressed. Even before he went to Southampton, I thought at the time when he got given the Southampton job, I remember saying, "What an appointment for Southampton! A fantastic appointment for Southampton." I think that he's a good name to suggest as well. But let's talk about Potter very quick, and we'll get on to the comments. Don't worry, we'll get on to you guys. Potter would be up there, I think. If I'm being serious and I take Rodgers away, you know me, I love Brendan. I just love him. I forgave him once after he left, and I love him. So I'm just going to be blinded by that bias forever. I'm a cuckold, mate. I'm a cuckold. There's no doubt about it. But
I'll get cut.
That will get clipped. What I will say is, if I was to take Brendan aside and my undying love and unconfessed, just take that aside, Potter has got to be up there as one of the number ones as well. Graham Potter has got to be up there. He would fit the mould so well. I think it'd be a great option for him. And people are going to, and we've already kind of touched on it, right? People are going to be like, oh, we shouldn't be a club for somebody like Potter to come back and then go back to England in 2 or 3 years' time. Well, that's what we are. That's it. And we need to accept that. Unless, I'll say that. I said it earlier in the stream, I'll say it again. Do you want Neil Lennon back in the door? Is that what you're wanting? Because if you want a manager that's got to be here till the day he retires, that's what you're getting, is Neil Lennon. You've got to accept the reality. So I think Potter's up there even in a 2-3 year sort of thing. If we could have that, I think his football would be fantastic. I think that his reputation would also do wonders for us in terms of recruitment, Ryan. And I think that you've already seen the recruitment that he did at Brighton is something that if you were to match up beside Ange and Celtic, think is very similar in terms of
Yeah.
where they go for their players, the kind of players they get, and the money sort of thing.
And the thing is, I think looking at the Potter example, and I'm getting more and more intrigued by it the more I talk about it. He's got a better. There's more chance of him. Well, with Brendan Rodgers, there was more clout around him when we got him than if we were to get Graham Potter. I think there was more of a coup at that time because Graham Potter was never challenging for a league.
Yeah.
Brendan Rodgers was doing that at Liverpool. He was the Liverpool manager. Graham Potter was only the Chelsea manager a matter of months. So the thing is, if he was Brighton manager, the people would say that's a realistic target to be able to get him. It's just the fact that he was Chelsea manager. Maybe people see him in a sort of like an elevated
the upper
position.
echelons sort of managers, those guys, like, people always throw it, and I'm not saying he's anywhere near the level of this guy, but when people always throw out your Mourinho's, like, oh, why don't we ask Mourinho the question? I think a lot of people look at Potter like that, and I'm like, nah, he's not there,
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that. Sorry, I'm trying half and half. I was watching.
How's it going in the Partick game anyway?
Ross County have stayed up. They won it.
Oh, did they
won
win?
It on penalties.
That's got to be one of the biggest bottlings in SPFL history. That's got to be up there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Arsenal bottling the league, but I think that's arguably worse. Partick were away with it. I mean, that save. I was talking about it. That save that Laidlaw made in the first leg. That's what's kept Ross County up. Because if that was 4-0, then it would have been over.
Anyway, right, fuck Partick Thistle and Ross County. Let's get fucking up them. Right, let's get into the chat for a minute. We've spoke about a few of our names. We'll come back onto some in a moment. I want to get you guys involved. Ryan's about the pictures very soon, so we're not going to be on much. We're not going to be on much longer. I'm also got the pictures tonight, but just not at the same time.
I'm not going on a date, guys. Don't worry.
No, don't worry. What we need is a few of your guys' names. Never going to happen. That's just not going to happen. No, he's not leaving Burnley anytime soon. Would I take him? Probably, but just not going to happen.
I would absolutely take him. The way Burnley,
absolutely.
He's got a project there.
Even as a former City winning captain, I'm sure that I could forgive him. What do you think of Bielsa and Marsh? Is Bielsa not just taking the Uruguay job?
Yeah, the Uruguay manager.
So that's not going to happen. Jesse Marsh, Ryan.
Marsh would probably take it more so than he would 2 years ago, but would Celtic go in for him after his failed stint at Leeds?
Yeah.
I didn't really see too much. I didn't see too much of a system at Leeds at all when I watched them.
Jesse Marsh has really hurt himself with his last 2 jobs now. Leipzig and Leeds has not gone to plan. I really like him. I really do think he's a good coach. Am I prepared for Celtic to take the gamble on him after the last 2 jobs? I'm not sure. And I hate doing it. I don't want to do it, right? I think the thing that I'd love the most about him is I would feel like I'd be actually living in Ted Lasso. And I
knew that was coming.
I love Ted Lasso, so I would actually love that. But I don't want to fall into the fucking cliche, like, oh, he's American, so he's Ted Lasso. But I don't think I'd be ready to take the risk on Marsh, Ryan.
Yeah, it is very risky. But then again, you look at the positives to that. He'd be a guy with a point to prove, and he'd come in and he'd be very passionate. You know that. You know he'd bring his passion. You'd get the automatic Ted Lasso references from the mainstream media, but it's one of those ones. He could see that as a sort of a launch pad to sort of revive his career. I'm getting you on the Marsh.
All my videos would be like the Ted Lasso opening credits, mate, until he was like away from the club. What I will say is Ted. Just called him bloody Ted. Jesse Marsh. Ted Marsh, right? What I will say about Jesse Marsh is he's not my first choice. He's probably not even in my top 5 choices. And I don't necessarily want to take that gamble. But if he was to get the job, I would back him and I'd be okay with it. I would be. But I just wouldn't put him in my kind of upper echelon of choices. Let's get some other names in from the chat. It's flying. Kennedy.
That just won't wash for the fans, unfortunately.
I agree. I don't think it's... John Kennedy's first job can't be Celtic. I don't have a problem with him managing Celtic one day, and I love him to bits, and I've always rated him as a coach. I don't think it's time to appoint him as Celtic manager, Ryan.
Yeah, the thing is, I see a lot of people talking about it in the comments. Kevin Muscat Would
No,
that wash with the fans? I know
no,
he played
no.
one season with Rangers, but if you
I'm
want to
going
keep
to.
that
It's
Japanese
not
connection,
just because he's a former Rangers player. Has he done enough yet to justify being Celtic manager? Are we just going to appoint him purely off the basis he's currently managing in Japan? I think that's lazy. I think that's
yeah, I
just
get
as
that. I
lazy
get that.
as like appointing a Kennedy. Just because he's
I get
managed in
that.
Japan, that's and that's not me obviously coming at you there, Ryan. But people that I've seen plenty of people in the comments section of my videos going Kevin Muscat because he's managing Yokohama. I'm like, and what? Because he's managing. Yeah, we got a last manager for you. Does that mean that like just because Jockstein managed bloody, I don't know, Hibs before Celtic, we should always go for a Hibs manager? No,
No, I
absolutely
get
not.
that.
I don't think that Muscat has done enough to justify being Celtic manager. And I might sound biased. I might sound bitter. A former Rangers player as manager's never a good idea. I don't
It's
think.
not going to wash, is it? I mean,
No.
I know Lee Johnson. Lee Johnson played for Hearts for like 2 minutes, and then he became the Hibs manager. But that's a whole
Completely
different kettle of
different.
fish.
Yeah.
It's checkers and chess basically, the two of them. It's the only thing is he did win the league in Japan with Yokohama, so did Ange. But that's even then. I think the only reason we'd be appointing him is to sort of keep that Japanese connection, and I think if your scouting's good, then you'll be able to find players in other countries as
Yeah.
well.
I think that the manager shouldn't have anything to do with this connection in Japan now. I think that that's something that should just stay with the club and every other department, and it doesn't need to necessarily be a manager that does that. Just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I know it
yeah,
helps.
totally.
It
Yeah,
helps, but
the scouting system. The thing is, we should still be going for the players that we would have went for under Ange Postecoglou or under a
yeah.
new manager because that scouting system should still be there. That's Mark Lawwell's job. This is why Mark Lawwell was brought into the club. Apart from being Peter's son, which if you want to talk about, that's a different story though. It's supposed to help in these processes. This is the first time that we'll properly see Mark Lawwell, I think, in the thick of things when it comes
Yeah.
to the new manager. This is his first major test. He had it good with Ange Postecoglou because he was doing about 3 or 4 jobs at the one time, especially in his first season. I know I was mentioning that the other day, but it's going to be interesting to see Mark Lawwell and how he does with regards to the new manager and working with him. I still hope we can get gems, and that should be an attractive thing for any new manager coming through the door. But we'll wait and see. Now is when we'll see.
Let's go on to one more to talk about in depth because his name's already been thrown out in the media and I want to hear your opinion on it. So let's find his name in the comments here somewhere to bring it up. Who's brought him up? Mark has brought him up. Davy Moyes, Ryan.
It seems as if he's always going to get linked with Celtic until he gets the job, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think his time was about 5 or 6 years ago, but there is some talk about him potentially leaving West Ham at the end of the season, irrespective of them winning that Conference League trophy. One thing I would say about David Moyes is that he's got a better European record than Ange did. I know Ange was only in Europe for 2 seasons, but look at David Moyes' European record at West Ham over the past 2 years.
As well.
That's very, very true. He got them to the semi-finals. Arguably, with the squad that they had, they should have been winning the Europa League last season. I get that. But Frankfurt were a well-oiled side, as we see in the final.
A lot of people saying no to Moyes, and I think a big part of that is because he's not had that glamorous opportunity and he failed at United and maybe he's a bit older and such as well. He's once again not my first pick, but I feel like a lot of people are forgetting how good of a coach David Moyes is. He is an incredibly good manager. He done magnificent at Everton, well warranted the Manchester United job. He was sacked unfairly from Manchester United well before he should have been. He failed at Spain, fair enough. Failed in Spain, yada yada. He kept Sunderland in the Premier League. He's done a fantastic job at West Ham. He could win a European trophy with them. He is such a good coach. And once again, he's someone that if he got the job, I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't be annoyed. But he just wouldn't be my first choice, Ryan. But you've got to look at what he's done in the Europa League this season. And I know it's different because West Ham are worth about £110 million. But that's the kind of thing that maybe would appeal to a lot of people, I suppose.
Yeah. Would I be able to throw out one curveball?
Hold on, you can in a moment. Hold on. Potter, £10 donation from Gareth. Thank you very much, Gareth. He says Potter would be a perfect fit. I mean, his transfer dealings, his ability to develop young and relatively unknown players just screams Celtic because that's what we do, right? Still hoping that Ange stays. I am hoping that there's a last-minute U-turn. We've not even spoke of that, but I don't think we're going to get it. But I agree with all the comments about Potter. I think that's the kind of thing we've already touched on. But yeah, good comment, Gareth. Right, Ryan, Who's your curveball before we kind of wrap things up tonight?
Talk about career revivals. A guy that's not been in charge of a team in a couple of years. Why not ask the question to Andre Villas-Boas?
Oh, not for me. But
No?
no, because I've never been a fan of him, mate. I've never seen it. I've
I
never
loved it
seen
at
it.
Porto. I've got to be honest. I
Yeah,
loved him at Porto.
I think Porto obviously is it. But when I watched him in England, and then when was he? Even when he was at Zen, I know he was in charge when he knocked us out, didn't he, in the Europa League? He was in charge. I just don't know. There's something about him, Ryan. He's just never been. He's always a name that gets brought up with Celtic, I feel, but I don't know. He's one that I just don't think that I have just watched enough of to have an opinion kind of fairly formulated on him. But go for your why have you supposed?
I just think he's been out the game. That's maybe one that would go against him. The fact that he's not had a club in a couple of years, he's out of it. That would we talk about Roy Keane not getting the job because he's been out of the game for 10, 11, 12 years now. I hope that never happens. I hope that never transpires. That is an appointment that just couldn't happen. That'd be even worse if we appointed them now than if we appointed them 2 years ago somehow. I think with Andre Villas-Boas, he's got that aura about him. I don't know about you, when I see him, he's got that aura because he's won stuff before. Yes, it didn't work out for him at Chelsea, and then it worked out a tiny bit at Spurs. It worked out for a season, and then the second season it totally fell away. I just think maybe he just needs a fresh start somewhere. And at Celtic, he'd have 60,000 adoring fans. I'm trying to hype this guy up, and do you know what? He's not had it. I'm actually going to retract my statement.
Do you give up already?
I've given up. Aye. just bring bring somebody in that's been doing a job.
I love how somebody I seen it on 67 Hail Hale's website. I'm sure it was their website, but somebody in the media, I can't remember who it was, a pundit or something, maybe Commons was like, Celtic should ask the question to Marco Rose, as if he's going to up sticks Leipzig and come to Celtic, like as if that's going to happen. Yeah, I'm sure Marco Rose is fucking ready to walk through the door. Let's end off the stream doing this, Ryan. Can you? Maybe you can't, maybe you can. And I want everybody in the chat to do the same to kind of end off. By the way, we're over 1,300 viewers right now. That is absolutely nuts. When the moment comes, when the announcement is official, we'll try and give you an emergency podcast. We'll see who's available and we'll try and get one done. We'll do it live and get you all involved, and get Kieran Aldo on and get Callum on as well. But I want all of you to think, and you might need a minute, but Ryan, do you think you have 5 names at this moment in time that would be your 5 in the shortlist?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through my first 2, then we'll have your first 2, then we'll do my last 3 and your last 3. So my first 2, this is no really any particular order, but we've already spoken enough about them, but I'll go Rodgers and Potter to start off. They'd be 2 of my first. They would be 2 of my first. They would be my first 2. Yeah, absolutely.
My first 2
in order. Yeah.
My first 2 would be Potter, then Knutson.
Potter and Knutson. Okay, I can get behind it. Because I would say in my 3, 4 and 5 slot, and this is in no really any particular order, I think I'd definitely put Knutson in there somewhere. I think that he would definitely be more than deserving of an interview at the club. I think that I would put... I don't know what other 2 I'd put in with him right enough. Knutson... See, I'm looking through the chat and I'm looking for names. Who's your third? Go, third.
Rodgers,
okay. Right, so we've got the exact same first 3 right now. Like just
purely because he's a safe pair of hands.
Yeah. You couldn't knock it back after what he'd done, you know. Like, I know a lot of people still don't trust him or whatever, but I guess that's what it is. Seen someone saying Patrick Vieira, Ryan?
Can see that because of the City Group link. Now, he was the manager of New York City FC, so that would make a wee bit of sense. But what I would say is Celtic have got a lot of flair players, and he couldn't get anything out of Eze, Edward, and Zaha, and Olise. So I think he would struggle with players like Jota, etc. If they're still at the club, obviously.
For my last 2, I'm going to go for Hasenhüttl at 4. And I'm going to go... Do you know what? I said he wouldn't be in my top 5, but I'm going to, from now, until I can sit down and look through a lot more. No, Michael Carrick. Bang. There it is. Michael
Wow.
Carrick. That's
I
Michael
am
Carrick
going.
would be number 5.
So is it number 4 and number 5? I'm
Number
looking
4,
for
number
here.
5.
There was somebody in my head. My God, it's completely went out. Marsh and somebody else. I wouldn't mind Carrick either, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Wish Rob Edwards wasn't at Luton, or I would have said him. Oh God. Who is there? Who else is there?
I was going to ask you a question. What's your thoughts on Enzo Maresca at this moment in time? I would say no personally.
Because of the Parma job.
Yeah.
That's the big black mark to his name for me.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's just, yeah, he's assistant to Pep and blah, blah, but I don't think that necessarily means that he's ready to walk right into a job.
I see people saying Scott Parker. I'm like, no chance.
No, not a chance in hell.
I'd rather Peter Parker than Scott Parker.
I think that you've only got to look, and this is no disrespect to Celtic great in my eyes, but the fact that Scott Parker failed at Bruges and now Ronnie Dyer is in that job, I'd rather Ronnie Dyer than Scott Parker, right? And that's no disrespect to Dyer. I love Ronnie Dyer. I love them at Celtic as well, but I'd rather Dyer than Parker any day of the week.
I think if Ronnie Dyer was still at Standard Liège, he would maybe have been in the running for a Celtic job.
Yeah.
Because I think the system is now there. The system was there for maybe him to flourish in that role. He's a bit older as well, so he'd have that sort of gravitas. It's interesting.
Do you know who would have been one of my, and this is, we're going to wrap up in a minute because I know you need to get away, Ryan. One of my names a couple of years ago would have been, when he was still at his last job, I always said that he was doing that good enough that one day I thought that he could have been Celtic manager, and it was Wayne Rooney. Not now, but I remember just when he was at Derby and he was doing really well with everything that was going on. I was like, I hope that he's my favourite player ever. Everybody knows that. So I was like, oh yeah, maybe Rooney one day. But I think that for now is probably a bit quieter.
Yeah, I don't think that one's going to happen, unfortunately. I know he's a Celtic fan. I know he does have Celtic leanings, but yeah I don't think that'll be happening. Especially, well, at least not for a couple of years. Maybe he needs to improve things at DC United before that.
Yeah.
Any European job comes calling, I would say.
Yeah. Right, well, we'll wrap it up there because it's coming up to 5 to 8. What time's your showing again, Ryan?
8:10.
Oh my God. You told me to shut the fuck up and let you go. Right, I'm going to wrap it there, ladies and gents. Thank you. We'll keep you updated as the story progresses. Over 1,300 views is absolutely nuts. I'm going to let Ryan go. I'm going to let you all go. Ange Postecoglou looks to be out the door at Celtic. It's a sad day for all, but we will still be here, so don't panic. Right, we'll see you next time. Cheerio.